Welcome! We're about to dive into a really dramatic story from the ancient world. It's got a king, a forgotten book, and a whole lot of impending doom, all packed into the 22nd chapter of 2 Kings. So let's jump right into the most dramatic scene. A powerful king literally tearing his royal robes apart in a moment of pure despair. Now, this isn't just some temper tantrum. This is an ancient symbol for profound grief and absolute horror. And that really is the central question, isn't it? Why would a dusty, forgotten book drive a king to do something so drastic? Well, that question is the key to unlocking this whole pivotal story about leadership, discovery, and ultimately consequence. To really get the king's reaction, we first have to understand the world he was living in. We're in the kingdom of Judah, around 622 BC, and a massive national project is just getting started. The king we're talking about is Josiah, and you gotta know, he was a real reformer. He was a stark contrast to his grandfather Manasseh, whose long reign had basically normalized corruption and led the entire nation way off track. Josiah, on the other hand, was all about moral integrity. So for years, things are kind of chugging along. But then, everything changes in the 18th year of his rule. After almost 2 decades on the throne, Josiah decides it's finally time to make a big move. And what was his big project? It was a national effort to repair the temple in Jerusalem, which had been neglected for ages. He sends his top official, Shaphan, to get the money organized and hire all the carpenters and builders they need to restore the spiritual heart of the nation. And it was right in the middle of all this practical, dusty, hands-on work of rebuilding that the workers made a discovery. A discovery that would shake the kingdom to its absolute core. The high priest, a guy named Hilkiah, finds a scroll. And listen, this isn't just some old document. This is a foundational text that had been lost, or maybe just ignored, for generations, hiding in plain sight right there in the temple. So what exactly was in this book? Well, scholars are pretty much all in agreement that it was the book of Deuteronomy, or at least a big part of it. And that is so crucial because Deuteronomy doesn't just contain laws. It contains a list of severe, absolutely terrifying curses for anyone who disobeys them. So you can imagine the scene. The scribe starts reading the words of this book out loud to the king, and it hits him like a ton of bricks. He has this horrifying realization that for generations, his people, led by kings like his own grandfather, had been breaking every single rule in the book. He wasn't just hearing laws, he was hearing a divine indictment against his entire kingdom. And that is why he tore his clothes. Now, what Josiah does next is pretty remarkable. He doesn't try to hide the book, he doesn't try to spin it. No, instead, he demands a divine explanation. He sends a delegation of his top officials to a prophetess named Huldah to ask a terrifyingly simple question. Are the threats in this book real? Are we in that much trouble? He knows this isn't just about him. It's about everybody. Huldah comes back with a really stark 2-part message. For the nation, the verdict is already in. Judgment is coming and it's irreversible. Decades of turning away have sealed their fate. But for King Josiah personally, there's grace. Because his humility, his repentance was so genuine, God heard him. So, this is really the crucial point of the whole story, right? It's this tension between 2 completely different destinies, an inescapable national disaster and a personal reprieve for the leader. And wouldn't you know it, just as Huldah predicted, that's exactly how it played out. Josiah died before the disaster, but about 36 years after that book was found, the Babylonian Empire sacked Jerusalem and destroyed the very temple he had just repaired. The wrath was delayed, but it wasn't canceled. But Josiah was promised he wouldn't live to see it. And why? It wasn't just about following rules. It was about his heart. The text says his heart was tender, that he humbled himself, that he wept. His response was immediate and sincere, and it was that authenticity that earned him peace. And this brings us to a really powerful takeaway about the limits of reform. Josiah's story shows that a leader's genuine repentance could absolutely delay a coming disaster, but it couldn't erase generations of accumulated guilt. One person's integrity could hold back the flood for a time, but it couldn't stop the storm. So the story of King Josiah leaves us with this timeless, pretty challenging question. It shows that while one person's integrity can profoundly change their own fate, changing the destiny of a whole nation that has lost its way, well, that's another challenge entirely.